and welcome to another episode of Life After Work, a podcast brought to you by RadioAlty and Altrincham Community Media, where four ordinary blokes chew over various topics of conversation, from politics to Christmas and everything else in between. With us today is Ash Sharma, a former dentist who was forced to retire from his beloved profession of 27 years due to medical reasons.
Hi, everyone.
The good news is that Ash has now clearly found a new passion for wearing loud shirts, which I suspect will be frowned upon by the orthodontic world, but today he is looking very dapper indeed.
Thank you.
Great shirt for radio.
Also with us today, Phil Harrison, a former insurance sales wizard who decided to retire early and live life to the full. Phil is the only member of the group that makes me sweat profusely, merely by recounting the many triathlons he has completed, especially when my own personal triathlon includes getting out of bed, getting dressed and having breakfast.
Way.
Very fit individual man. Our third gang member, Mr. Rod Maxwell. Rod had an illustrious career in business management and consultancy, but was forced to retire due to a serious brain injury. Many of you will know Rod as the resident DJ of RadioAlty, who hosts the lockdown late lunch on Monday, Wednesdays and Fridays between 2 and 4. An unforgettable show, but unfortunately not for Rod, whose memory, it seems, is now on par with the goldfish. And in the final addition to this quintessential quartet is, of course, me, Paul Davies, a former GMP police officer, who now turns his hands to writing various novels and lives, as Mr. Maxwell would say, in exile in Skiathos, in Greece. So that completes our introduction. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon. That was very professional.
Very, very impressive intro.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I'm very impressed. Ironically enough, given the bouncy introduction to this meeting, today's topic, I believe we're going to be discussing, however, depression, how it affects us, if we've got it, and how that's affected us personally, depression in society in general. I'm basically kind of talking about what is still, in my mind, a bit of a taboo subject with some people. I said to you before we came on air, gentlemen, that my theory of people who don't know about depression or haven't suffered it is if you can't see it, it can't be real. Such as a broken arm, a broken leg, a cut, whatever. You can't see depression, so does it really exist? If I may, I know I've done the introduction, but I'd like to kick it off and personally say that I think I've mentioned in one of the former episodes that I got depression through things that happened in work. I never saw myself as a bloke that would get depression. Getting to the age of, I think I was 53 when it set in, and I thought, you know, I'm gonna bypass depression. I'm not gonna get it. I was a happy-go-lucky chap, and I got it to an extent where it knocked me for six. It really put me in a bad way, and I'll tell you some of the reasons why it put me in a bad way. The first, I've just explained, I didn't expect to get it, so I didn't know what to expect with it. And the lethargy and the anger with yourself and the total feeling of why the hell am I here really, really hits you hard. But the other thing that sort of compounded all that was the embarrassment of getting it. And I wouldn't tell a soul. It's like, they're all going to think I'm a bit weak and a bit, oh, you've got depression. Oh, you're just fed up. You want to have a few days off. So I kept it to myself very, very much and just steadily went down and down and down until eventually I decided, you know, I need to somehow bounce back from this. So I actually went to see my doctor. And from there, he recommended me to a therapist, cognitive therapy it was. And gave me the usual tablets. And it took me a while. I'm getting on top of it. I still have days when I'm very much down, but I can bounce back quicker now than I used to be able to. And it's still, I can't actually believe that I'm putting it out on a live podcast about depression, but I feel it's something that we need to try and eradicate as a taboo subject, because there's a lot of people like me who maybe, I'm not saying I'm a strong person, but maybe aren't as strong as me, who take that pretty bad road of thinking, well, I can't cope on my own. I don't want to tell anybody I've got it because of it's taboo and blah, 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 and do something that ultimately could end their life. And there are people out there like that. So if today we can sort of discuss this subject and just sort of see if we can come up with any, I'm not saying solutions, but make it easier for people to talk about. I know, Ash, if I can just hand over to you there, I know that you yourself, in fact, only a few weeks ago told us personally in sort of a private chat that you had suffered from depression.
Yeah, I don't know if it's actually depression, because you were saying beforehand, it's a strict criteria of symptoms, isn't it, what depression is? I don't know if it was, but I was very, well, once my career ended, I was very, very down. You're thinking about, where do I go from here? It was almost like a countdown with my career, because my operation with my finger was going to be in November. This is 2019. And it was months beforehand where I knew I would have to give my job up. And you're almost living in a twilight area, because it's not quite hit yet. And you're still talking to people. It doesn't really hit until the January afterwards, when you get up normally on a Monday morning and get ready to go into surgery, and I'm not doing that anymore. And you feel like, where do I go from here? And it's the thing I think with depression, with blokes in particular, is that it affects men more, doesn't it? More severely, I think. I think I'm right in saying that, in the sense that suicides are higher in men. Depression its effects are much more severe in men as well. Theories are that we don't discuss things very well with other people. We don't, with mates, how are you doing? And you go, yeah, I'm fine, mate, plodding on, doing everything. And, we don't really share our feelings. Like you said, Paul, you alluded to it. You said, is it a sign of weakness if you start saying things like to people, do you know what? I'm not doing that good, actually. And, then is it a sign of weakness to say that? So it is very, very difficult for men, and our identity is related to a lot of work, isn't it? Our jobs. So me as a dentist, that was me, Ash, the dentist. And it's something I've aspired to all that time. And then once that job, your identity, your raison d'etre almost is gone. And you think you start getting up in the mornings. I think, again, you said it a while back, Paul, you said, you feel like a fraud. Like you get up in the morning and you think, who am I? What am I going to do? Where do I go from here? And they're very, very tough questions to ask yourself, aren't they? Because as I was a dentist, for 27 years, I didn't get time to ask questions like that. I was in one day, it's really hardcore, it's full on. You've got all these metrics you're going through, you're looking at how many patients you're dealing with, the results are there. You don't stand back and ever question yourself. And when you get a time to actually stop and then to question yourself, look yourself in the mirror, it sometimes, the answers aren't very nice, are they?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'd like, again, I'd like to hear two things. I don't want to take the flow of the conversation, but I'd like to hear, Rod, your input on this, because I know you must have suffered greatly with some form of depression with what happened to you. But then I'd also like to get Phil's angle, because Phil, fortunately, thankfully, hasn't suffered with depression, but has been in contact with somebody with depression. And I'd like to know his angle on, as an outsider looking into people who say they have depression, what he thinks about it and how he would approach it.
So just picking up on that, about 6 months after I came out of hospital, out of the cocoon of Salford Royal, the neurology department, I think it was then that I was advised to go and see a neuropsychologist, and I wasn't, and I didn't really understand what the process was and why I was going to it. And I wasn't ready because I hadn't recognized in myself that actually I was suffering from, I guess you could call it depression or behavioral change, mood swings, that type of thing. And so I didn't actually engage with the whole process quite well because I didn't think I was ready. Now, I'm 4 years down the line since I stopped working, and I now have a psychologist who I have fortnightly sessions with on an hour-long basis. And I had to say, I thought that was the domain of American people, that that's what you had to have that, and it was a lifestyle thing, and in some ways, it's like the process. It's a bit like retraining the brain to adapt, or your even just your sense to adapt to a new situation, because you were. I think what you don't understand until you come out of work is what a process and a regime it actually is, and you're surrounded by structure and things that you're supposed to conform with, and then suddenly, we've discussed this in previous podcasts, you suddenly stop all that and you feel a little bit empty. And it's some of the culture of work and the processes of work, and even the point of planning for the years ahead, and none of that happens, and social life through work, all of that. So I think probably I whether I was clinically depressed, I don't know, but I definitely had a downer, and I felt like there was a black cloud over me. And to be honest, it also my dad died about 6 months after I came out of hospital, and that really hit me hard, because I was at a low point anyway, and I felt very defensively weak, if you like. And then that happening, it just it all sort of tumbled on top of me. And I was thinking, I'm a 47-year-old nearly man, and I'm struggling with this. But I got quite concerned when somebody suggested I should be taking pills to overcome this. I forget what they are. The classic depressive pill. Prozac. There you go. Right. And actually, this was a lowest point of my life when I had this packet of pills in front of me. And I know for a lot of people they're really important. But for me, I sat there and I thought, right, I can go two ways here. I can take these and use them as a prop, or I can make some adjustments to the way I want to be. And I need to find some happiness back in my life, and I need to find some things that fulfill me again. And that's when I started working in the charity shop and doing the choir and eventually the radio. Putting these things back in my life really replaced the need to take those tablets. And I never did. I never opened the packet. I disposed of them. I made a conscious decision. I didn't want to lean on that prop. I needed to go and do the things that I used to do. And actually, miraculously, a lot of those things were things I was doing as a teenager, in and above school, being part of sports clubs or choirs or in a band or whatever. It was having something else to me. And when I stopped working, I realized I hadn't done any of those things for ages. So no wonder I felt different and a bit depressed, because suddenly life was vacuous, if you like. So I don't, was I depressed? I don't know. I still have periods where actually life feels a bit hard at times, to be honest. And work moves on. People forget about you. That's the thing. And they don't mean it, but their lives are on the superhighway, and we're taking a different stop.
Well, I mean, can I just say, Rod, that just so chimes with me as well, in that sense. When I had given up when I eventually gave up my job, I had to, I decided to see a CBT as well, a cognitive behavior person, for about 8 to 9 weeks. That was absolutely fantastic. The GP actually prescribed me things, and sleeping tablets and this, that, and the other. They were there, sat on the bedside cabinet, for weeks. I didn't touch them, and like you, Rod, I just chucked them away. I thought, I'm not doing it this way. And again, I'm not belittling anyone that has to do that. So that is, if they have to do it, that is absolutely fine. It's whatever, whatever works. So I did it in a different way, use routines and that sort of thing. Because I'm a very, like you said, Rod, with your job, it's structure and routine. I need to have that. And so I developed my own routines to get through that. And it has worked, but it's, not every day is great. It's a struggle all the way through. It's just, you fight the way through. It's like a fog sometimes. The fog will lift some days, and sometimes the fog is dead. It never goes. It's always there. But it's just how thick it is, basically, sometimes.
But I find, Ash, I find it quite hard to talk about. And because if I talk to friends about it, I feel like I'm becoming a bit of a bore, or it's self-indulgent, or it's all in my head.
Yeah.
So I actually find it really hard to talk about, because I don't want to impose upon people. And right now, especially now, lots of people have their own challenges,
This is the only time I've talked about it since. And whenever we talk, this between us and all the, I like to say, thousands of listeners who are listening now, basically. But like you say, we just get on with it until someone brings it up.
It's exactly that. And even when someone do you know what, gentlemen, this is the male, because our job from caveman days is to protect and fight, isn't it? Protect and fight. If we lose those abilities to protect and fight via ways of depression, not only do we become depressed, we feel lost. So to talk about it, this silly male mentality is, if you're going to talk to someone and say, do you know what, I'm no longer a protection, I'm a bit of a loser because I've got depression.
Exactly.
And we don't
it's your identity, isn't it?
Yeah, and we don't do it. It's crazy. Phil, what do you when you hear, or someone says, if they ever do say to you?
Well, you make that point. I've never suffered from depression. We all have our bad days, but there's a massive distinction to be made, of course. So I don't speak with any authority, and I'm very wary about commenting on something that I don't know too much about. So with that caveat, I'll offer general observations and opinions. My opinion is, even though I've never suffered, I have seen it at close hand in a couple of instances. So I know it's very real. I don't dismiss it in any way whatsoever. Like you say, it's sometimes difficult because, unlike a broken arm, you can't see it, but it doesn't make it any less real. I think it's becoming not more real, but more prevalent, as my perception of the world is it's getting a more difficult place. It's getting a harder place. Maybe that's me getting old. Is that us getting old? I don't know, but that's my perception. It's a tougher world out there than it used to be. It's more pressure. I think without going political again, I think there's something about society that's not. In one sense, I think there's a contradiction here. In one sense, it's got a more hard-driven world. But on the other hand, I do think what you were just talking about then, in terms of the attitude towards it, I think we actually have come a long way in, say, the last, I don't know exactly how long, 5-10 years maybe. My previous employer, and I don't think that by any means the only one, but they were very good. It was Allianz Insurance, and it was very noticeable that within the HR function, that on top of all the physical health and safety that used to dominate the picture 10 years or so ago, on top of that came a lot of focus and concentration and effort to look after employees' mental health and well-being. So I think we've made great strides. Now that's in the corporate world, that's a reflection. But I think it is also out there in society as well. I think whilst you know right, Paul, that you maybe still feel that male macho sort of attitude might dominate or be prevalent, I think there is far more recognition that that is a bit silly, and actually we need to not adhere to that anymore and be a bit more modern and enlightened about things. So I think we've massively improved as a society in that regard. So there's some initial observations.
I think part of it is that what was seen to be male habits or behaviors have actually changed quite a bit as well. So for me, one of the things I really struggled with was, you go out for a night out and people, go and have a few drinks or whatever. And I was advised I couldn't drink alcohol after my brain operation. And I've generally tried very hard not to. But you realize when you're in a pub situation and you're used to having a few drinks and being out with the lads or whatever, and you're not drinking, that it has an impact on you. And I think that, plus when you're going and you haven't got work to talk about, right? And people, and then people think, oh, you're lucky, you don't have any of that. And
yeah,
and you realize that in these situations, the biggest thing I found was, even with members of my family, whereas before they would have said, how was your weekend work? That would be a conversation starter. People, I didn't have work to talk about anymore. And nobody asked me, how's the charity shop or how's the radio, and without that, then I felt actually quite stripped bare, like there was a big piece of me missing. And I didn't have anything legitimate to talk about because I couldn't talk about work because I didn't do work.
Rod, you should have worked in insurance. Then it becomes a blessing that people love you for it. So he doesn't talk about insurance anymore.
well, it's, what the thing is, people didn't really understand what the heck I did. I'm not even sure I did, but you would at least talk about traveling and being in different places and whatever, and you talk.
I take your point. It provides a focus of what you do.
I don't know if you think that. Personally speaking as well, there's a cultural aspect of it. I don't know if you guys agree with that. Is that in my culture, I'm brought up as a Hindu, so it was very, very aspirational. It was very, very about education. You must become. You've heard the almost cliched stories of you've got to become a doctor, an engineer, or a lawyer, blah blah blah, and all that sort of thing. And that's almost brainwashed into you, and that's all become part of your DNA. And so when you become that, you think you're just in that tram line. Then you're in your groove. Life begins. Off you go, and that's it. And then you don't, for a minute, guys, ever think that train will ever get derailed. You don't think it. And then something happens, and bang, the train goes off its rails, and you think, oh my God, this is something I've been wanting to do all this time. My identity is enshrouded in all this. I haven't got that anymore now. What are people going to see me as? I was Ash the dentist. They would ask, how are you getting on? What treatments did you do today? And a bit from what you were saying about before, about what relating it to your job is a big part of your life. That all just evaporates and disappears. And it was such a struggle for me. That was the biggest thing, was just this massive loss of even now, the routines now. I'm just wondering. I'm just thinking sometimes in the foggy moments, you think to yourself, what would I have been doing now? What could I have done? Who would I? What if it keeps going through your head, doesn't it? And you can drive you nuts sometimes, can't it?
And it's
it's an interesting question. Can I put this back to Paul almost? Because picking up on what you're saying there, though, Ash, something Paul said was that you didn't expect to get it, and that sort of worries me because it means I could get it too, in a sense. And
for sure. At the end of the day, that's exactly it. I would thought I was stronger. Sometimes I'll be honest with you, when you hear people like that, you're almost dismissive of it, and you don't know. It's not an it. It happens. For me, it's not deep. I don't think I was depressed, to be honest, but it just gets you really, really down, and you start questioning a lot of things, and you don't know how to manage it.
The way I sort of, and I was talking to my therapist that I had for a number of weeks, the way I see depression is like this. I think there's obviously a part of our brain that takes in all this information and decides it and puts it to whatever channel, whatever file in your brain is. And that's protected, if you think, by like a cutout switch. So if something overheats in an appliance, there's a cutout switch till it cools down. So when we get some bad news, even to the point of where your favourite football team loses, we have a slight feeling of depression. But the brain's clever enough to go, oh yeah, I'm fed up, and then click this back together again. and you carry on. It's put to the back of your mind under bad memories, and you forget about it. I was getting all these different bad incidences coming at once, that this particular cutout switch stayed open and it wouldn't close. So all the bad crap wasn't getting funneled to where it should be in the brain. It was all staying in this part of my brain, which was, I was thinking about it all the time. And it wasn't one thing, bad thing would lead to you thinking about another, would lead you to thinking about another, and I really, honestly, Phil, to come back to what you were saying, I did not expect to get it. I was like Ash. I was in that train track. I was heading towards retirement. I'd done my bit. Happy, yeah. I had colds, and I've broken arms. I've had all that, and I really did not expect a man of 52, aka me, to suddenly get depression. And it was a sensation of, it was scary. I can honestly say, hand on heart, I've never been scared of much in my life, but I was scared of this because I couldn't stop. There was no way I could stop the bad thoughts in my head. And I don't mean suicidal thoughts. I mean, just any bad, there was no good coming into my head. No good.
Yeah.
It was all bad, and I could not stop it. And that bloody frightened me. And what was worse, I was brought up in an era where, like I said before, rightly or wrongly, men go out to work, women stay at home, the man's a protector, the man's a provider, the man's strong, you don't get shit like this, excuse my French, everybody. But it happened, and I was like, I don't know what to do. I really didn't know what to do. Scary.
What do you think the cause is? Is it it's almost like the nature versus nurture argument? Do you think there's a predisposition to it, or was it caused by events?
Right. I was told, and very, very, it was explained to me in a way that I understood. I finally got to know why. Okay, so it was a chain of events over, when I say events, big occasions over certain years. First of all, my dad, I was very close to my dad, and my dad passed away. Now, because of the job I was doing, the viewers can't see this, but I am drawing like a peaks and troughs sort of graph in the air. In everybody's life, there's peaks and troughs, and you plateau. There's your downs, your up days, and you plateau. Everybody has that. So my dad passing away, I was close to, was obviously a trough. Now, what happened? I couldn't get to the bottom of that trough and grieve properly because of my job, which as a police officer was very, very fast paced. It was always going, so I didn't have the time to actually grieve and get to the bottom of that trough. So my brain leveled out before the bottom of the trough and came back up again. Still had, unhappy memories of losing my dad, but not as bad. Carry on. Then my mum died. Again, we were very close family. I went down that trough again. I still didn't peak out at the bottom of the trough because other things were going on. Fast forward 15 years from those occasions, 15, 20 years from those occasions, and the third and final thing, being let down by work, who say that you are your family, that was the catalyst that made me hit the bottom of those two troughs that I hadn't reached before. But now I had the added heartache of a third trough to go down to. So I'd gone down to this super trough, and that's what it was. It was a build-up of emotions and past events that my brain hadn't properly computed properly and hadn't had time to compute, all came back at once. And that's what it was. It was just a spiral down.
It was like falling into a well, basically.
Yes, it was. So I wasn't hitting the troughs. It was very much like it was described as, but I've not got this because I was asked bipolar. You go bipolar, you can drop to an almighty low and then sort of shoot up to really ecstatic and happy. And mine sort of was on that kind of plane. So I didn't get right down when in reality I should have got right down, because that's the process of healing down there, and you come up from the healing. That's part of the process. So I wasn't reaching there. So the third big event just brought it all out, and that was it. push.
Too much, almost too much in one go, sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know, I do think, though, that there's a function of this is caused by lack of time. And what I mean by that is that I think in the past, people had these issues, but they had more time to discuss it with people down the pub or whatever. Or maybe they didn't, but I almost think that life is going so quickly that people don't have time for each other as much anymore, and are not actually, their ears might be open, but they're not actually listening, because everybody's dealing with their own thing. So therefore I felt very uncomfortable about going to see a therapist for this.
Yeah, I did when the first, yeah, exactly.
And I thought, this is an American thing. Why do I need like a coach for my brain? Because that's what it was ultimately. And I thought, this is such a middle class type thing, and it's a modern thing to go and get a therapist and to have a therapist. And I really struggled with that. And actually, what I've realized is I've had a couple of people that I've seen, and you've got to have the right relationship with somebody and be able to get on with them. And actually, it often is talking therapy. You don't really sometimes appreciate you're going through a process. And as a consultant, I am a former consultant, classic for show me the methodology, take me through the stages. That's what I used to do. And I was looking for that. And actually, it's a bit like when you were doing your dental work, you would break it into different sections and different. Yeah. And I wanted to see the map, the blueprint for, right, how are you going to treat me? When I'm going to know where I am, right? And that actually what I've learned is don't go with it. You just have to commit yourself to a process, trust that they're going to take you through it, and get it out, really.
Did you find it work, Rod? Did you find it work then? And if it did, how long into the process did you find it clicking?
To be honest, Ash, I think I'm with my third person now. This is the third attempt. We started, we've never met each other physically, although I went, I saw him actually for the first time on Sunday at Salford Royal, because we did I forget what it's called, but an exercise that maps your mind and maps your brain, and your memory to understand cognitively. It's like a cognitive assessment, and it was the very first time I've met this guy. But we've been talking pretty much now for the last 6 months and having sessions. And I had to change my approach to it, which was I was trying not to understand the process. I decided just to use the sessions to download. So if I had a bad week, and if part of my issue is I get very angry, and I never was a very angry person, but I get very angry, and in an Ian Paisley Ulster sort of way, I can shout a lot, and it sounds very violent, and it sounds worse than it is, but I just get so frustrated, and it all comes out, and it could be something really small, and it comes out, right? And he's given me a couple of things to do, and they're dead simple, sort of 3-word things to think about in the moment and go, right, pause, just can't take a step back, and little tricks like that, little strategies, you could call them tactics, have just helped. And now we're going through a process where it's basically it's sort of retraining my temperament in a way, and I never thought I would need this. I never thought, you think you get to 50 and you think, God, life experience is enough that you can rely on. But it's a bit like your house needing a refurb. It's a bit like, needing to do an extension or needing to get the electrician in to rewire the house. Maybe actually it needs sometimes something precipitates causes it, but then sometimes you might just need it, But it's been I haven't said to many people about it. Oh God knows I'm out here. It didn't sit well. It didn't sit well with me that I needed this prop.
Yeah.
But I know, I'm not sure I was depressed, but I think I looked at, I at times I felt very lonely, really did. Even though I'm surrounded by lots of people in the house. Lockdown hasn't helped that at all. at all. But you know, it could hit at any time, I guess, you know.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. I mean, a lot of people have lots of coping mechanisms and coping strategies with this. I mean, I suppose that'd be good to share as well, how we get through things like this. I mean, with me, it was try to transfer routine from job to routines here, getting up virtually every time at the same time in the morning, doing the same thing, go for my walk. When the gym was open, go to the gym and do what I do. And then it's just to try and establish a routine all the time, because that's the way I work. And then exercise, and you know, that's really important as well. You've got to be able to body and mind together. I know I'm coming out with cliches today, aren't I? But it is, you know, because body and mind do go together at the end of the day. They do. So yeah. And then, you know, reading, and then like you do with Paul, I bet when you're writing, I bet it's just so cathartic to just get it out there. And you know, I wish I had that skill.
It absolutely is. I've written quite a number of poems of late, some of which are light-hearted, but the majority are in the moment, and they're probably written, I should say, that's bad, written on a day when I am feeling low, and the best way to help me is to express it in a poem. I'll make up a poem, and it takes my mind off it. So I can now recover. I have methods where I can recover quicker than I used to. So it'll last. A very bad period for me would be no longer than 3 days, and then I can come out. That's a very, very bad period. Normally a day where I'm now putting it down to just, you know what, it's a bad day. I'm fed up for the day, and move on. And the next day I'm all right. But yeah, I find writing about it, and it's good, you know, the comments I get when I post on Facebook about some lady, I won't mention who it was, she lives in Australia, and I wrote this particular poem, and she personally inboxed me and said, I hope you don't mind me inboxing you, and I feel very selfish, but that poem could have been written for me. Thank you so much for writing it. And people can relate to it. You know? And now I've got, because I was very, like I said before, I was me, depression, no, I'm me, I'm Paul Davies. I don't get depression. I'm not going to admit to that. That's rubbish. But now I'm very open about it, because, you know, if you're not open,
why shouldn't you be?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. People, you ask somebody out there, oh, you know what, I've got a terrible sore throat today. It's like a razor blade. They'll tell you all about that, but nobody will say, do you know what, Phil? I'm really, really down today. Because what's your answer to that? You go, right.
Well, I think there's the response is because people, I don't know, I wouldn't know particularly what is helpful to somebody, what is a helpful thing to say or do.
Exactly. Listen. Exactly. I think the big thing is to listen, isn't it? I mean, it's what we're all doing here, is to just spend some time and listen and say, well, why? What's the matter? What's happened? And then just to listen for a while. It's really, really, I mean, it's a skill that that's hard to master, isn't it?
That is exactly it, Ash. That is exactly it. There isn't a pre-format to what to say to someone with depression. But the very fact that you can say, do you know what, mate? I can't comprehend what you're going through, but here's my ears, and I'm ready to listen to you. Unload it.
And there's a link there, as you said, Rod. Maybe people don't, with busy lives, busy jobs, don't have the opportunity to do that.
Time,
you should make it. And also lockdown, as you say, hasn't helped at all, because there isn't the opportunity there to get that sort of response and feedback and opportunity to it.
Well, it's probably a very old-fashioned view, but I think that social media doesn't help at times, because...
No, that's not the right medium for it.
People can give the impression that their lives are full and very exciting and interesting and all of that. And honestly, I think having a dog... our dog Alfie was probably I used to refer to him as my mental health dog, because getting out and walking and meeting people through walking was, and having that routine, I think comes back to that point of routine. You know, you think when you're working, you want to kick routine into touch. You know, you can't wait to retire and have all this time to yourself type thing. You know, I wasn't waiting for retirement, but you know, you can understand that. And I actually, having a routine, having to take him out and then meeting people and having chats, you know, and listening to people. I think listening is also a key skill, but listening to people and just, I think I was very fortunate. What I realized I liked about my job wasn't necessarily the core of what we did as management consultants, was meeting people, being in new situations and learning stuff, right? That's what I really enjoyed. And when you go out on a walk and I meet somebody, I like that, you know, and I think for me anyway, it's I look at it now a lot less in a binary black and white sense than I would have done before this, you know, and it is a taboo subject, but it shouldn't be. I think mental health, and I think it's moving.
It's far less so now.
It is moving. It is moving in the right direction. Some, unfortunately, the people I used to work for, some are playing at the game and sort of seemingly saying that they're embracing it for the sake of, because they have to, because it's health and safety, and they're not really doing it. But there are some marvelous charities and people out there that, you know, are recognising it. Just going off, not even off on a slight tangent, but I was looking the other day at, I was thinking of starting a fundraiser, you know, what are the fundraisers are called that you do online nowadays? Like you donate money to them.
Yeah, crowdfunding.
You go GoFunding, yeah. And it was basically, it started off, I was going to do it for underprivileged kids that have got an amazing talent, whether that's playing an instrument, playing a sport, writing, acting, where because of their circumstances, they're not able to get the help that they need. You know, if they're on the breadlines, so to say, the family, mum and dad can't afford a £200, £300 second-hand trumpet for the next Louis Armstrong to develop. So I was thinking of some sort of charity like that. But what I did come across, and this I never knew this existed. It was brilliant. There is, and forgive me because I can't think of the name of this charity, but it's basically this charity that's set up, and it is a centre for males only who have massive bouts of depression that have been brought on by bouts of sexual abuse when they were younger. And what they encourage, it's brilliant, what they encourage these lads to do, they're from all walks of life, is to write about their experiences, whether that's by a story or by a poem or whatever. And I was reading some of these this stuff online, and it's heartbreaking. But you think, what a fantastic approach to someone with two taboo subjects, to be honest with you. What, three? A male that's been in some form sexually abused as a child, a male who's got suffers with depression, and then to bring all this out and give them the strength and the ability to say, this has happened to me, and I'm going to write about it and tell you how I feel about it. I think that's fantastic. So yes, charities like that are really grabbing and recognizing mental health for whatever reason, depression or it's brought on.
The thing that scares me, the thing I worry about this is that I think we're about to hit a tsunami of mental health challenges.
I think you're right.
And this pandemic will have brought it on. And unfortunately, I, as much as I love the NHS and have ultimate respect for it and it saved my life, they're not equipped to handle mental health. And it is the domain of private medicine, private therapists, for private health consultants. And unless you have an AXA, BUPA, that type of access, you're not going to get to it. So my worry is that we're going to have a two-tier economy around mental health potentially. And people who need it may not be able to get the access to it. And again, also you have to get the right person, so that I feel lucky that I had access to people that could help when we eventually find the right person. But
I think you're right. I think there is going to be a projected, as you put it, a tsunami of depression, particularly with young people. It's the kids. They've had GCSEs, A levels, doing degrees, and that sort of thing, and all of their sociability. They're gregarious in nature generally. Obviously, generalizing there a little bit. But what I'm saying is that their mode of living in terms of sharing and being with each other, it's just gone, and they're not able to do that, and it's really, really hard.
And you realize this is where youth clubs in times of old would have played a role, and they don't exist, partly because we moved on as a society to become very virtual, partly also because people didn't have the time to commit to them, and
the football teams, like my son Aaron, he plays football, on a Sunday. That's all gone. Cricket teams, they've gone now as well. So not only are you using your health benefits, you're losing the team benefits from that as well. So it's such a shame. That you're right. I think,
as you said before, the physical can impact massively on the mental. It's very important for the getting out and about, getting outdoors, being.
Well, when you do that, Phil, don't you? I mean, you
I think it's really important.
Yeah. I mean, for your mental well-being, I mean, you must feel so much better once you've done that.
Yeah, I'll say that if I don't exercise, I do feel very uneasy. It makes me.
What I'd say to anybody listening to this is that if they think they're going through something like that, go and find something to engage with, volunteer in some way, and you don't even have to talk about what you're going through. Just find something that you can get involved with and commit to for a while, and it might help you just take your mind off it a little bit, or just talk to somebody. It can be anybody.
As you say, there are a lot of good resources out there now.
Well, much better, and hopefully I would hope that we're a kinder society that's a little bit more tolerant of and doesn't find this as much a taboo subject as it once was. But I fear we're still going to
I think,
and if you can talk, like you said, I mean, there's lots of therapies out there. Talking is so important. Writing is another one as well. But there is help out there. I mean, you don't know how important talking is, either with a therapist. I mean, even if you don't believe it. I mean, the first session I went to, I was there with my arms folded, virtually going, "Yeah, what? Go on, what? What do you want me to say?" She goes, "Well, she goes, how do you feel?" And I go, "Well, I don't know how I feel." And you're very dismissive, and I can't believe I was like that. But then as the ice starts melting and you start realizing and you're putting it into fruition, and the fruition starts developing over a period of time, and then you'll start looking forward to them. Can you believe that? You start looking forward to the sessions, because you realize how beneficial. But the very first one, don't be afraid to, if you're there and you think, and you're very dubious, you join the club. There's lots of people who thought like that in the first place.
I think one of the key messages as well to the listeners and who's thinking that they've got depression is that you are not alone.
Yes,
you are not
exactly.
alone.
That's true. Yeah.
There's people, like we say, there's more and more charities and services springing up now to help. But you know what? You might be holding back talking about your depression with somebody who is also holding back talking about their depression.
Yeah,
you're not alone in it. There's millions of people suffering it, and although it's bad for health, it's not a bad thing to have. No one's going to think you're a leper.
No.
Get out there, talk about it. That's the key message.
Absolutely.
Seriously.
Cool. Right. Okay. Until next week then, guys.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, see you next week, guys.
Yeah.